Welcome to this shortwave radio channel, and this is another look at the frequency spectrum of shortwave, megahertz by megahertz. And I want to thank everybody that has been happy to see this series on what's listenable in these frequency ranges. So what's between 2 and 3 megahertz? This is where we're going to look at in this video. It's a very interesting range of shortwave. Actually, it's technically medium wave. Shortwave starts at 3 megahertz. So this is technically still what we call medium wave. It contains a lot of things, but where the problem lies is the fact that a lot of what is in here is for a lot of people washed out in the noise. It's often a range where there's a lot of noise and people don't hear a lot. It's also a range where there's some frequency ranges that are very local to an area around the world. So there's kind of a tropical band in here that is the 120 meter international or broadcast band, if you want. There's a lot of little stuff in here. So the first part, 2000 kilohertz or 2 megahertz, is, and if we go to about 2200, 2300 kilohertz, is mostly all sorts of utilities of every kind that are available in here. There's some maritime mobile stuff. There's also one frequency that is well known for a lot of people in telecommunications. 2182 is the international distress calling frequency. So if you monitor 2182, you might hear an SOS of some sort, or a station calling for help. And this is part of the 2 megahertz range. It's the international calling and distress frequency. And around it, plus or minus 5 or 10 kilohertz, lots of everything that is related to distress and calling are around there. As we move up, starting at around 2300 up to 2490 or 80 or something, there's a tropical band there for broadcasts. It's not used a lot, but there are some things in there, especially in some specific areas. I know that there's Australia used to use this frequency range. And so there are some stations still listed to use that frequency range. So that is something that is kind of interesting to look at in the shortwave spectrum. Now, if we continue with our frequency range, we get to 2500 kilohertz, 2.5 megahertz also known is the same, it's the equivalent. This range 2500 is for time stations. An example here is that late at night often I will hear WWV, and it's one of the stations. Actually, we hear it really in the background noise right now. There was just a little beep, if you might have heard. That is WWV. Usually later at night it actually comes in here as it's dark. So 2.5 megahertz, both Hawaii and Colorado time signal. So we hear it a little bit in the background noise here. Usually around 04 or 05 UT comes a little stronger here. And winter time is often also better. If we continue above the frequency ranges, we have, so we hear it here. I guess we can, it comes in and out, fades in and out, as you see here, WWV. As we move up, there's more maritime mobile stuff in here, including here in Canada. One of the things we hear a lot is in the East Coast is 2749, for example, and 2598, where we, if you listen here, I've got some Coast Guard weather. So this is possibly Halifax, Nova Scotia, Canada. There's also 2598, that is often a station, a place where I hear stuff that have to do with the different weather stations that are scattered around the East Coast. Now be careful here, you see some of the strong peaks right here. A lot of them are spurious signals that are that the RSP1A actually sometimes does when you tune around the frequency ranges. And above 2800, there is a station that, or a frequency range that is aeronautical. So you might actually be able to hear on the upper frequency ranges some aeronautical stuff. And I actually have posted some videos of listening to Gander radio on that frequency range actually. So that is something that is possible in hearing aeronautical communications on the upper range of 3 megahertz. So this is what we have in that frequency range of 2 to 3 megahertz. Also in Europe, there's a lot of weather stations from different countries that actually use that range to send bulletin. Once again, they will be in the parts of the 2 megahertz range that are dedicated to, mostly dedicated to what is maritime broadcasts, all sorts of maritime weather broadcasts of some sort. And don't forget that the upper range, you might actually be listening to some aeronautical communications that might be actually coming in on some of these ranges. So lots of little stuff in here to listen to, and an interesting band. It's nighttime mostly because of the low frequency, and it's often one of the ranges that is surprising if you start tuning around. Of course, if you don't have too much noise, because that's probably the biggest problem of that frequency range is noise levels. A lot of people have noise levels that are often very difficult to work with in these range of frequencies. But lots of stuff, and it's always interesting to tune around. I check that band quite regularly, especially since I got my loop antennas now. I actually have much better reception on these ranges, and there's a lot of stuff to listen to. If you enjoy my videos, please subscribe, give us thumbs up, and hope that you enjoy this series of megahertz by megahertz of the shortwave spectrum.